My name is Devlin and I'm speaking for a proposition. Now I will define the key terms of this debate. So, oh, the minimum age requirement to is 18, just like right now in the status quo, and replacing it with a basic political literacy test. The basic political literacy test as things like your knowledge on like taxes and different political concepts. And we will write this test by having a unbiased is experienced politician to write this test for us. Now I will present both of my points. My first point is that this allows us to ensure informed voting. A basic political test could ensure that voters understand fundamental aspects of the political system, such as the roles of government, how elections work, and what the different offices are responsible for. This, since these elections influence lots of things like education, healthcare, and security, supporters argue that most voters should possess at least a small basic understanding of these systems before helping decide beside before helping decide who wins the election. And my second point would be that age doesn't really guarantee political knowledge. So, a lot of adults above 18 may not be that know that much about politics, while some young adolescents may be very informed about current affairs, sometimes much more than the real voters who are above 18. Hence, I believe that taking this test would allow younger voters' voices to be heard in order to be less biased and allow the younger generations to also vote while also still being in, mostly evidence-based voting, allowing better decision making. And those are my points. Thank you.
This debate is about two major ideas. One, voting as a right, which you get it because you're a part of society, and two, voting as a reward, you get it because if you pass a test. And the key groups of this debate are citizens, young and uneducated people, and the government. We don't think people should be uninformed, but because democracy is based on equal rights, not exams. Now, the model in their world is that there's no fixed voting age, and they must pass a political test to vote, and only people who pass can vote. So the voting voting becomes something that you have to earn. That means that a political vote is no longer equal for everyone. But in our world, everyone above 18 can vote. There isn't any test, and everyone has equal voting rights. So democracy is equal, even if people are not perfect voters. Now, the stakeholders in this debate are ordinary people, less educated people, and the government. Now, in the status quo right now, some voters are informed, some voters are not, but everyone still gets a chance to vote. This is because democracy cares more about the fairness of everyone than perfection. Now, this is because that votes that are not from perfect views are still accepted because not including someone is seen as much worse. Now, we only need to prove one thing, that democracy is worse when voting depends on a test instead of equal citizenship. Now, onto some rebuttals. Proposition talks about that voters should understand the basic aspects of the political system. We agree that voters should understand these basic, but that is not a good reason to restrict these voting rights. Even if people pass the test, it only shows memorization, not real understanding on how policies affect their lives. Same goes for any other test. You might understand in theory, but you don't have the experience to actually know about it in real life. They also said about age doesn't guarantee political knowledge. Yes, we agree, but that is not the point of the system.
POI.
Yeah.
You said that taking the test doesn't make sure that you have the political knowledge, right? Have the political experience, right? Well, isn't politics mostly not about application, but more about ideas and how you present them?
Exactly, because it is about ideas and how you represent them. That means that you haven't even lived a life, because even if you're talking about below the age of 18 to vote, then that means that they don't even have the chance to know what these views are about. And that is why we shouldn't just make it about some test and it's supposed to be age, argument about age. Now onto my argument about voting is a right and not something you can earn. Voting should be equal because everyone who is affected by the government decisions deserves a voice. Everyone aged 18 and above lives under the same system. There's laws, there's taxes, and there's laws and there's taxes and there's schools. These things affect their own lives, no matter how much they know about politics. Now, most major government decisions mainly affect adults more directly, especially in areas like jobs, tax, even a new president. So it is reasonable to say that these political votes are voted to those who are most affected. So they deserve a vote even if they are not experts. Now, why is this true? 3 reasons. One, education is not equal. Some people go to better schools or have more time to study politics. So tests does not measure who is better or smarter. It just measures who had more opportunity to learn. Second, test doesn't measure like real understanding, as I said before. People can't just memorize answers just to pass the test. But memorizing is not the same as understanding how policies affect their own real life because they haven't experienced it yet. Their experience matters in democracy. People understand how laws affect them in real life, even if they cannot explain it in a test. So without their votes, decisions become like it's not like connected between what happens in society. Now this leads to 3 impacts. One, there's exclusion. Some people can lose their vote just because they fail. This can create unequal votes. Second, there's less fair decisions. When certain groups are excluded from the vote, their needs are ignored. And third, there's less trust in democracy. People feel the system is unfair because the access to voting is no longer equal to everyone. Now, in conclusion, voting is not supposed to be a test of knowledge, and it's not something people need to earn. Once you turn voting into a test, you don't fix democracy. You just change it into a system where some people are like blocked out based on their own education and opportunity, about how much they actually know about politics.
Before I continue with our last point, I will want to do 2 rebuttals to the first opposition. The first opposition says that everyone above 18 could use to vote, but some adults do not even know about the world, not know about the geography, and if they vote, they'll just vote randomly and they even don't know what's voting about. And the first opposition also said if they do not vote, they will be not connected with the world. But you think about if everyone just they vote randomly, then the world will be unfair and it's not meaning who vote with. And for our point, we hold the view that teenagers under 18 should be given the right to vote, and provided they can just pass a political knowledge test. The biggest advantage of this rule is that it helps these young voters to grow into mature and responsible citizens. First, preparing for the tests pushes teenagers out of their schoolwork and focuses them on real social problems. To pass the exam, no. Young people have to follow current news, understand public politics, and learn about how our society works. Instead of only taking care of our grades and hobbies, they started to think about the community development and the future of the country. This learning process greatly broadens their horizons and turns them from pure students into people who care about the society. And secondly, the right to vote teaches teenagers a strong sense of responsibility.
Okay, why?
Once they learn the qualification to vote, they will realize that their choice can influence public affairs. They will no longer make decisions based on their feelings or online trends. They will carefully compare different plans and think about long-term benefits before casting a vote. Besides, taking part in elections lets children experience civil rights firsthand. Many students only learn citizenship knowledge from textbooks. Being a qualified young voter makes this lesson real. They'll make their value their own opinion and learn to take part in public decisions actively. These value experiences build good character and lay a solid foundation for their adult life. So in conclusion, allowing tested under 18 teenagers to vote is more than expanding voting rights. It creates a precious chance for the children to grow up, and they will gain knowledge, build responsibility, and become thoughtful citizens through the whole process. Thank you.
In nearly every country, the government sets the age limit for government voting for only adults at the age of above 18 years old. However, the government is trying to explain that people of all ages need to take literacy exams to see plus the basic understanding of the country's government. But is that really a good idea? Before I argument, I would like to briefly rebuttal against the claims the government team has stated towards this motion. First of all, they said that age doesn't really guarantee knowledge. We compare a youth aged 10 to 13 and an adult aged 18 to 22 on a subject such as basic knowledge on the country's government. The adult would easily overpower the adolescents through their knowledge. Age does guarantee knowledge because the adults have already learned enough to vote for the governments. That's why the status quo is adults aged over 18 are the only ones that can delegates. The government knows this already. That's why they use this rule. Secondly, they have stated that this would lead to teens to become a good citizen. Just because teen gets to vote doesn't 100% guarantee that the teens become a good citizen or a responsible person in the future. Right now in the world, which is the status quo, many people are trying their hardest to fix unkind teens or bullies to become nicer and make them learn to respect others. Not many things have happened right now, which means it will not work that easily as we say. Now I will present my first argument. The youth will be easily influenced by their parents to vote for a certain delegate. Most children in the modern world know a lot about their country. After passing the test, it's highly likely for these youth parents' footsteps and vote for the same delegate without thinking efficiently and deeply. This will likely hijack the voting system through highly biased voting. Not only that, there can be a massive problem with cheating on these exams. Since parents already know what comes out in the test, what it is likely to be about, parents would tell their child about the answers or the key importance of the government's work. Adding to this, the youth don't know how serious these type of voting are. Youth will think that the government voting is just a fun little activity and will vote the delegate using their own judgments on looks, background information. Remember that not everyone in the world is honest and can rig the votes. People nowadays are too advanced, and these adolescents will somehow find a way to cheat through the test without even trying. In contrast, it would be students that actually worked really hard, using their time and effort to pass. The government would think that this was a wrong idea, which would lead to a ban for that age group, or the full adolescent group aged under 18. While some people cheated, others didn't, which is not fair at all for the hardworking students. Therefore, we can see that these literacy tests would cause more harm than good to the youth cheating and rigging the votes. Youth following the parents' footsteps and voting for that exact delegate, which would be a problem. This is why I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
Firstly, I like to do some rebuttals to the opposition side. In Optu's speech, I heard that they think the parents' views will make the children's views very biased. However, we have 4 reasons why this is untrue. Adults also absorb biased viewpoints from their families, relatives, social media, and partisan community. Parental bias is not exclusive to minors. Age cannot solve the problem of biased thoughts, so it is a problem on both sides. Our political literacy test focuses on objective institutional knowledge, constitutional rules, the functions of government departments, and the logic of policy operation. The exam does not ask for personal subjective stances on controversial topics. Even if parents instill one-sided opinions in children, candidates still have to objective public civic knowledge to pass the exam. Family prejudice cannot help them pass the assessment. The examination requires candidates to form independent, logical judgment of policies, rather than merely repeating the opinions of their guardians. During the learning process, teenagers will systematically learn multi-angle thinking modes of public affairs, which helps them break the single bias mindsets given by their parents. Even if individual teenagers are temporarily influenced by family opinions, we should resist the qualification by testing their political cognition rather than completely deprive all underage groups of vote writing merely because some individuals are maybe biased. This is collective punishment for all the young people. And I'd also like to rebut the argument that they say it isn't unfair. However, on their side, it is even more unfair. Because their side didn't allow any children to participate, which is even more unfair. If the children pass the test, that means their knowledge is enough. They didn't earn that. They just get it because of their no, their work done in the political regime. And I'd also say that age-based brain claims apply unevenly. Plenty of 30 or 40-year-olds still emotional, illogical voting choices. So the opposition's argument isn't true at all. And now I'd like to review on our side's arguments. Devlin says that this allows voters to make more informed decisions. We didn't receive a lot of rebuttals, and I have already reviewed on this because of the reason said. The young children, if they pass that test, it means that they are knowledgeable enough to participate. And for that Devlin's second argument, some younger people more informed, so they can let the government make a wiser decision. This is the most important arguments of our side, and we haven't received a lot of rebuttals. Making the government hear the voice of young children, they can make fair decisions to trace all the citizens in their country fairly. And then for Tina's argument, he said that it can make the citizens more knowledgeable and then go questioning about the country. This means the country can improve at a faster pace, especially for those developing countries. And then I would like to touch upon clashes. Firstly, the knowledge of the teenagers. Our side, if they pass the test, that is knowledgeable enough, and the test is done by unbiased parents. So that means they can't know the questions beforehand, which is fair. And the second one is, should the government listen to them? Is their decisions fair enough? However, our side says yes, because the parents, even though they are biased, but they also have other impacts like social media, etc. So this problem is still there on both sides. Thank you.
This debate argued not only of the clash between experience and testing, but of the sheer nature of what defines a person qualified to vote in a democracy. In this sinful world, it is frankly not possible to create a democracy full of citizens who are all qualified for this expectation. However, as the opposition, we believe strongly that the current status quo of minimum age requirement is a better option compared to the presented motion. Sorry. Before I move on with my clashes, I would like to identify some of the rebuttals against the Deputy Prime Minister. She has stated that some adults do not know all about this world. At least 18 years of experience in the world did something to their brains. Teenagers and the youth are not even less informed. And that doesn't even prove that there are none of these some individuals for some teenagers. Rather, there are more teenagers who exploit this power of voting against adults. If students start to care more about politics from a young age instead of working on their studies, this will overwhelm them. Now moving on, the main clash of this whole debate was between the credibility of maturity versus intellect. Intellect on paper, which was the side of the government, seems like the more reliable choice, but that is only on paper. Just because a person passed a test doesn't mean that the person genuinely understands all of the material presented on the test. A good analogy we can use for here is to compare people who passed the cut line, if the motion was in action, to high schoolers in Korea studying for the Korean SAT or suning. Have you ever wondered why Koreans are bad at speaking English when it's literally embedded in their curriculum since 3rd grade? They almost learn language for a decade throughout their academic career, but are terrible at speaking the language. Why do you think that is? It's because Koreans study for these English tests not for the information, but for the grades and numbers on the gradebook. They only do it for the credit and opportunity to apply for good colleges that value high English grades. The same will probably happen if a literacy test is initiated in the world of politics. In fact, since the power to vote is so much powerful than the opportunity to college, there will be more people who only who only memorize the material instead of actually in understanding the flow of politics. One of the most important factors of politics consists of having a vivid stance and vivid viewpoint towards the government. But once this supposedly starts to be measured by a literacy test, the voting system will turn into a cage full of robots who don't have a personal voice. Most prominent examples are children, like what the deputy leader of opposition has mentioned. Parents for more vote side are bound to force their children to study for this test. Children who clearly lack the same experience and personal voice compared to an average citizen will only memorize the information set upon them, obviously. Even if children do pass the test, their votes will not show the voice of the citizens well due to the lack of personal voice and the influence of the parents. Rather than giving the opportunity to vote to these children, it is clearly more reliable to give a minimum age requirement in order to make sure that people at least have basic personal voice towards the government. In this clash, the government lacked evidence on why the addition of a literacy test will necessarily enhance the intellects of the people or voting in a democracy, whereas the opposition has proven clearly how the literacy test will not increase intellect but ironically ruin it. Therefore, as long as the opposition are standing here today to give this speech on this microphone, I am proud to oppose. Thank you.
Debate is about what democracy should look like. Pop wants voting to depend on a test, on a political literacy test. We say voting should stay equal for all citizens that are 18 and above. We believe that we win on two clear paths. First is that democracy is based on equal political rights, not just your ability to take a test. Voting exists because people are affected by these government decisions, not because that they can pass an exam. Proposition turns voting into something you must earn through education and memorization and test performance. But these are not equal across society. In our world we live in today, no, it is not equal. The team I said before, some people have better schools, they have more time to study and they have more support. Others who are not so lucky do not. So the test does not measure who deserves a vote, it measures who had more opportunity. Now, second, their system does not even work. Our second, that proposition does not achieve their own goal of better democracy. They say that voters will be more informed and that taking tests means they will get the basic knowledge, but this does not work because first, passing a test, as I said before, does not measure real understanding. People can just memorize answers just to pass without thinking deeply about politics. Second, this bias is not even removed at all because even after passing the test, people are still influenced by social media, their parents, which is the same thing with the same problems we have today. So this test does not even solve bias. Third, it makes people that are good at exams, not people who have real life solutions to this society. And weighing both sides, Pop's world may slightly be a bit better because more knowledge, but it creates a large inequality between people who know about politics and people who do not. But our world keeps voting equal for all citizens. And in conclusion, we win because one, democracy must be equal for the political vote to work, and the proposition system removes all equal access to their system does not actually improve voting quality at all in reality. Thank you.
Hello, and I am going to be speaking for proposition reply. So, firstly, I believe that our points were stronger than the opposition's. They were more well developed, and we also directly rebutted to the opposition's points more than they did to us. I would also like to point out that the third of opposition contradicted his team on multiple occasions. And I overall just believe that we had a stronger case and that we should win.